Hey, welcome back Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and these are all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in episodes 3 and 4 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. We are a little backed up from the holidays. We have a breakdown of episode 1 and 2 waiting. It's written, it's not edited yet, so we're going to start with 3 and 4, and then in the next few days, we'll drop 1 and 2, hopefully. So, things are really starting to ramp up. Percy is beginning his quest for Zeus's Master Bolt, giving us a real look into the world of a demigod. Episode 3 is titled, We Visit the Garden Gnome Emporium. Now, this corresponds to chapter 11 in the book. The episode opens in an attic. This attic houses the Oracle at Delphi. In Greek mythology, the Oracle was a priestess who told prophecies under the god Apollo. People would visit the temple at Delphi to receive a look into the future. The Oracle spouts the first 2 lines of Percy's prophecy for his quest.
You shall go west and face the god who has turned, and you shall find what was stolen and see it safely returned.
We then cut to the amphitheater where Percy has to choose his 2 companions for the mission. Here you can see Chiron wearing a leg brace. Now, to make it mythologically canon, author Rick Riordan referenced a story from Pseudo-Apollodorus. The Bibliotheca was dated from the 2nd century CE. Now, in the story, Heracles let loose an arrow and it lodged itself in Chiron's knee.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
They tried to fix it, but it was incurable. Chiron begged for death, but it never came as he was immortal.
Jeez, and this guy decided to stay a teacher for eternity?
Yeah, I know, it couldn't be me. We then learned that the quest Percy undertakes is to head to Los Angeles and confront Hades, Lord of the Underworld.
Which is appropriate because LA is a sweltering hellhole.
Hey! We got a lot of subscribers in Los Angeles. Sorry guys, he didn't mean that. Percy picks Annabeth to accompany him on the quest. He says,
if the mission required someone to push me down a flight of stairs for it to succeed, you'd want someone who won't hesitate when they do it.
It's kind of heartwarming to hear him say this now at the beginning of his demigod journey. This line shows up in one of the latest books, Chalice of the Gods, except instead of stairs, it's off a cliff. Now, Chalice of the Gods is actually dedicated to Walker Scobell, Arian Simhadri, and Leah Jeffries, the actors of Percy, Grover, and Annabeth. Then we see Grover shoveling horse manure. Because Grover is a satyr, he has the ability to speak to animals. Percy tells Grover that he wants him to be his second companion on the quest, despite the warnings from the Oracle.
You shall be betrayed by the one who calls you friend.
I trust you.
You can't stop bros from being bros. Next, we see Luke helping Percy before his send-off. We learned that the Greek mythological world uses golden drachmas. In ancient Greece, the drachma was the currency for many city-states for about 10 centuries. Luke gives Percy a magical item from his father, Hermes.
Well, these are interesting.
Hermes is the god of travelers, messaging, and thievery, among a bunch of other stuff. Now, because he is the god of travelers, all unclaimed demigods are lumped into the Hermes cabin. One of his symbols were talaria, or winged sandals. But no modern teenager is going to rock winged sandals out on the street, so voila, winged converse. Luke utters the word
Maya
to activate the shoes. Maya was the mother of Hermes and the caretaker of Zeus's other children. I also love this detail that the wings aren't simply little wings attached to the sides, but big wings made up of laces of the shoe. It's very clever. When Percy talks to Luke, we see a close-up of this scar on his cheek. Not sure if this show will bring this up in later episodes, so I'll keep it to myself just for now. I'll just say that it's pertinent to Luke being okay with Percy choosing Grover for the mission. Now, we're reminded of the consequences of Thalia's story when Annabeth says goodbye to her tree.
The most powerful being in the universe's best idea to save his daughter's life was to turn her into a tree?
As the show emphasizes the importance of a hero's quest,
Heroes' quests are world-defining events.
we cut to our main trio on a Greyhound bus. Now, as a person who has traveled on many interstate buses before, I sympathize with Percy's nostrils. Here we learn more demigod information. Percy can never fly on an airplane due to him being Poseidon's son and a natural enemy of the sky. We also learned that intense smell can mask a demigod's presence. Now, this is why Sally stayed with Percy's awful stepdad, Gabe, for all these years. A human with that stench would mask even the strongest demigod's aura. Gabe's smell was the reason Percy stayed safe for most of his childhood. Grover then sings the consensus song.
The road's getting bumpy cause I got me some friends who just can't get along.
Guardian Spirit 13 on Reddit says that there was some speculation that it was inspired by a bonus song from the Percy Jackson musical called In the Same Boat. In the musical, Percy and Annabeth were having a spat about their parents, and Grover was trying to calm them down, just as he's doing here.
I think some of you guys should sing the consensus song together in the comments.
Oh, buddy, that's not how... Actually, you know what? That might be helpful. Anyways, Annabeth goes to buy the team snacks. Jackson. Now, we see sometimes seeing her pick what is not chips and soda like the boys asked, but what looks like gumballs candy labeled Big Oof Candy. Now, at first, we thought it was odd that they spent a considerable amount of time on this shot, but looking back, I think they're trying to have us remember these specific chewy snacks. They might come up and be the key to defeating a monster later in the season. Maybe have the team defeat a monster by chewing a gumball and spitting it, Spy Kids style. Back on the bus, Alecto offers a deal to Annabeth.
Lure him off this bus where I can take him quietly away from so many eyes, and your quest goes on unimpeded and unburdened.
Now, in the books, she doesn't have this much agency in talking deeply with enemies. But hey, I'm always here for more Megan Mullally. She is a treasure. Later, another Fury attacks the bus. Now, in Greek mythology, there were 3 Furies, Alecto, Megaera, and Tisiphone. Born from the blood of Uranos, they represent endless anger, jealousy, rage, and vengeful destruction. They act as the servants of Hades. Now, as we can see here, normal mortals don't see the dangerous-looking Fury, but rather Mrs. Dodds. This is because the mist shields humans from seeing mythic beings. Now, when Annabeth impales the Fury Tisiphone, we see her weapon fall to the floor. This is a celestial bronze dagger given to her by Luke, and one of the most important weapons in this series. When Percy asks to find a phone, Annabeth says,
"What do we need a phone for?"
Another important part of demigodness is the aversion to technology. In the books, using common devices like phones, computers, or anything with a cell signal is dangerous as it leads monsters to find you more easily. And then we enter the titular Auntie M's Garden Gnome Emporium, also known as Medusa's Lair. Now here we get a real diversion from the books, but honestly, I kind of think it's for the better. In the books, the trio is lured into the garden with the smell of food until Grover and Annabeth realize the trap. In the show, Annabeth immediately recognizes it for what it is, but they're prevented from leaving by Alecto. In the show's writer's room, the showrunner said, if Annabeth is always 6 steps ahead, how could she not know that they were dealing with Medusa immediately? It sets up more of a mystery in the book, but watching it as a show, it's kind of obvious if you're familiar with the myth. We can see different types of creatures petrified, including the Cyclops. When we meet Medusa, she's immediately kind and inviting. We're reminded of the lesson that Sally Jackson told us in the first episode.
I think we can trust her. My mom used to tell me her story. And the point was always that she isn't what people think.
As a child of Athena, Annabeth is not as trusting. Now, when the books initially came out, we were given a very standard, popular iteration of Medusa. She was romantically involved with Percy's father, Poseidon.
I used to date your daddy.
When they met up in Athena's temple, Athena cursed her to become a Gorgon. She harbors a grudge against Athena, so she goes after Annabeth in particular. Now, in the series, Riordan and the writers update the story to get closer to the original myth. The full article about the change is here in our description. Fair warning for readers, as it mentions heavier topics. Now, in the Variety article, Salome Halou writes that the original novels were made for a middle school audience and didn't delve into the backstory. Rick Riordan said that as a 12-year-old boy in 2005, I don't think he had the bandwidth for deconstructing the patriarchy. But once it shifted from a novel in Percy's perspective to first person to a TV show in third person, you're gonna need to see other perspectives. Rebecca Riordan, executive producer of the series and spouse of Rick Riordan, says it was one of the first things we talked about, how not to have a patriarchal lens. Now, according to the article, writer Daphne Olive was a major force in creating this storyline. The episode attempts to reference the original myth while keeping it age-appropriate for the intended audience. It's actually a really great read. You guys should check it out. Once again, we see the importance of perspective in this show, especially in the dichotomy of perspectives of the gods. Annabeth is loyal to her mother, Athena, the goddess of wisdom and battle strategy. She thinks that the gods are infallible and what her mother does is always just. Medusa instead shows how the gods are hypocrites.
They want us to blame ourselves for their own shortcomings.
That is
Medusa offers to get rid of Grover and Annabeth. That way, Percy can save his mother instead of focusing on the lightning bolt. Now here's where we can see how these two perspectives are clashing within Percy. He wants nothing from Poseidon and can only see the wreckage his father has caused. Percy just wants to save his mom. But to forego retrieving the lightning bolt means causing a war among the gods. Percy chooses to go with Annabeth and Grover. Now because Percy can't go into the air, otherwise risking Zeus's wrath, Grover takes the shoes instead. In the Emporium's basement, Grover plans to get her attention by getting in the air.
I'll get in the air. I'll draw her attention as soon as you hear me say Maya. You guys start. Oh boy!
When Grover tumbles down, he crashes into several statues. One of the statues he crashed into is a 3D printed replica of Rick Riordan as a letter carrier. Once Percy kills Medusa, the group confronts each other and everyone comes clean about their goals and intentions.
Medusa offered to help me save my mom if I turn to the 2 of you.
We can decide that as long as the 3 of us are together, none of us are gonna be alone.
Now, with the team being more tightly bonded, we get an iconic scene from the books. Just Percy being Percy.
They will see this as impertinent.
I am impertinent.
We see Medusa's head being mailed to Mount Olympus. For anyone who wants to visit, it's floor 600 of the Empire State Building. The head is delivered by Hermes, played by Lin-Manuel Miranda, creator of Hamilton, In the Heights, and the soundtracks of Moana and Encanto. Hermes hums the 80s song Arthur's Theme by Christopher Cross. The lyrics talk about somebody who was facing internal conflict between two juxtaposing places. Percy is similarly being pulled apart by two worlds. The mortal world is where his mother is from, and the mythic world where his dad needs him. The chorus says, when you get caught between the moon and New York City, the best that you can do is fall in love. Percy realizes that the only way to combine his two worlds is with the ones he trusts and calls his friends. And that is the end of episode 3, so let's talk about episode 4. This episode is called I Plunge to My Death, chapter 13 for all my book readers out there. This episode starts off with a flashback of Sally and a younger Percy at a swim class. When Sally pleads with Percy to learn to swim, he responds,
"Just breathe, Mommy."
We switch to Percy in a desert, taunted by an eerie voice.
She is coming.
Now, we have seen this figure for the past few episodes, always giving dark omens. This figure is a key character for the entire series. As the season progresses, keep an eye out for him and see how strong he becomes every episode. In the Amtrak sleeping cars, Percy confides his grievances to Annabeth.
Gotta beat up on Clarice just to get my father to admit he's my father. People who are close to you aren't supposed to treat you that way.
Now, here's a little lore for you. The series refers to the big three of the gods, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades. Zeus is the god of the sky, lightning, and all the other gods. Poseidon is the god of the seas, and Hades is the god of the underworld. A few years before this series took place, the big three gods decided not to sire any more children. They became too powerful and caused many disasters to civilization. But Zeus and Poseidon broke that rule. Zeus had Thalia, and Poseidon had Percy.
Jerry! Jerry! Jerry!
That is why Percy is constantly referred to as
Forbidden child?
We then get to Annabeth's backstory.
And to her, I wasn't a gift, so I left. I was 7.
After describing being left abandoned by her father and new stepfamily, Annabeth shows why she still has faith in the gods.
It isn't the gods who think that way. It's everybody. But at least with the gods, you know the rules.
As she says this, we can see her fiddling with something on her necklace. This is her father's college ring bestowed by her mother, Athena. Now, while they're eating breakfast, Grover laments about the growing pollution and the destruction of nature. And here we learn about another quest, one that will be essential to Grover's character over the course of the series.
The bravest satyrs volunteer to become searchers, trying to find Pan.
When the trio are questioned by the police for a mysterious mess in their cabin, we meet our next monster,
The mother of monsters.
Echidna.
Now, in Greek mythology, Echidna was a half-woman, half-snake, and mother to many of Greek mythology's most famous monsters. Fun fact, the Australian mammal, the echidna, was most likely named after Echidna. As the trio is being chased by Echidna and her child, we see the scenario play out from a mortal's perspective. Through the mist, a giant monster with spikes on its tail comes across as a chihuahua. Now, when they seek shelter, Annabeth takes them to a temple dedicated to Athena by one of her demigod siblings, the St. Louis Gateway Arch. No monsters can enter. At the entrance, we see the monument's dedication to the westward expansion of the United States.
You're talking about what some humans want this place to be about.
Now, this can be seen as a metaphor for what the gods themselves are doing. In the books, the gods move with the heart of Western civilization. That's why everything in the Greek pantheon resides in the USA. Because the influence and power of the Western civilization are strongest in the Americas, this is where all the gods and locations shifted. It mirrors the concept of manifest destiny shown here, where white Americans sought to remake the western part of the country into what they had already conquered in the East. As Percy and Annabeth start to bond, Percy collapses.
I think those singer things were poisonous.
When they attempt to pray to Athena at the top of the arch, we can see Echidna and the Chimera's shadow. Now, the Chimera was a fire-breathing monster that was part lion, part goat, and had a snake-headed tail. We learned that Athena intentionally did not prevent Echidna from entering the arch.
It embarrassed her. Now she's angry.
When Annabeth chooses to take on the Chimera and Echidna alone, Percy switches in her place.
Poseidon's never helped me before. He wasn't gonna start now.
After a pathetic fight, Percy loses his grip and falls from the top of the arch 630 feet. Submerged in the river below, we finally circle back to the opening scene. A sea nymph assures Percy that Poseidon is watching over him and to
Just breathe.
Percy Jackson just discovered that the son of a sea god can breathe underwater. Once again, this episode showed us how the series subverts our expectations. When Annabeth describes a sanctuary of Athena, a rival of Poseidon, we see the gateway arch reflected invertedly in a puddle of water. Our expectations of Athena were inverted when Echidna and Chimera were let into the arch and told Annabeth that she was embarrassed by her. Furthermore, our expectations of Poseidon were inverted when it turns out that he saved Percy instead and has been watching him this entire time. Well guys, that's all the Easter eggs we found in this episode. Big shout out to the writer of this video, Miss Srinidhi Rao. You can find her socials below. Let us know what you thought of episodes 3 and 4. Do you want to see us break down episode 1 and 2? Should we keep this going? Let us know in the comments or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.